Welcome to Negotiating Happiness, the show that helps you find happiness, success, and balance in your work and life. I'm Adriana, your host for this journey into entrepreneurship and personal growth. We're broadcasting live on 107.7 and 105.3 FM in New Orleans as part of the United Public Radio Network. We explore the latest strategies, insights, and stories from successful entrepreneurs and experts. From managing stress to building a thriving business, we've got you covered. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Negotiating Happiness. I am Adriana Fierstro. I'm your host, and I am excited to be here. We are broadcasting live on 107.7 and 105.3 FM in the beautiful city of New Orleans, and we are on the United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network. If you wanted to sit back and watch some of our shows, just a quick reminder that we are also on Roku TV. I can't believe it is September 9th, 2024, and I am here again with the lovely Helen. Hello, how are you?
Hello, Adriana. I'm well. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to welcome you back. If you guys don't know Helen, we're about to go and do a little dive into Helen's bio so you can get to know her a little bit. Today we will be talking about, teenagers in particular, and that, delicate age and parenting and being an entrepreneur and mixing it all in together. So I'm excited to kind of go a little bit that way, not just, our usual businessy part of things. So let me just get into it a little bit. So who is Helen? Helen has 25 years of experience in education, training, career, and program development, and she is the founder and executive director of Azul Education Services. Again, she's been on the show before, so we welcome her back. She's assisted thousands of students and job seekers in navigating career transitions from secondary school to post-secondary education and career advancement. She's worked at the top Canadian institutions, including the University of Toronto, Humber Institute for Technology and Advanced Learning, and University of Guelph-Humber. She's also an expert program developer and facilitator, where she facilitated training sessions for provincial and federal departments, developed programs for social service agencies, and delivered custom workshops and seminars for corporate clients. I'm so excited to have her back on because since the last time we've talked, there's been some changes with Azul Education Services, and she's also just accepting grade 12 students for fall 2024 university college application process, and she's only got 12 spots left. So if you are one of those parents that needs a little bit more information, highly recommend for you to get in touch with Helen. And she's also going to be hosting a seminar in October on parenting a high school student with career exploration. So welcome.
That was a mouthful. Thank you so much. And I will certainly talking about parenting that teenager, career exploration, but also the business side, because certainly for those who are listening who are entrepreneurs, that's a juggling act in itself. So we will certainly talk about that as entrepreneurs and what we role model to our kids.
Which, I mean, regardless if you're a parent or not, I think you come across a stage in your life where you think about, am I being a good role model? Like you might have nieces and nephews or, maybe grandchildren, or you are very close with other people's children. And we often wonder, are we doing it right? Are we, putting out there the best version of ourselves? So it's always a good discussion to have, even though you might not. I mean, I don't have a teenager, but I think about this all the time about how can I act accordingly, right? How can I make sure that I show Zach, my son, a part of this is life, but also look how great it can be. It's not all gloom and doom, but also this is the reality, right? It's such a balancing act.
Absolutely. And I will probably pepper in things for someone who's younger as well, because you're right. It isn't just parenting of teenagers. It starts at a young age. And it isn't just parents either. It's older siblings, it's aunts, uncles, grandparents, exactly like you said. So I think it's always good to have a better awareness of sort of our own influence on the people around us.
Right. And I think often I mean, we live in a society where we're very lucky to have access to all kinds of education, right? And I've had to recently think about my own situation with my son, because I mean it's September 9th, so here in Ontario, I mean hello to everybody from all over the place, but here in Ontario they started school last week, and my son started junior kindergarten. It was our first day, so it was a lot of firsts, a lot of emotions. But I was thinking at one point, he went into the public school system, and I have so much faith in the public school system, and there are places that maybe that's not the case. And I did have to think about, hey, like what would the private system look like? How is that going to change, or shape his future or his ability to have access to opportunities? So I would love, love, love to hear your expert opinion on this, and just to kind of give us a bit of a taste of, here's what the reality is, and here's what could be.
Great question. I think we all think about, even at a very early age, when you have a child, of course, there's all that excitement in the beginning, but the moment they turn, like even as early as 3, you start, well, even early, what am I going to do? Where am I going to put them? In a daycare, in a preschool, in public, private? There's so many options. And I do think that those are things that it's good that you're thinking about them. It means they're important to you. And there are lots of options. And the first piece of advice I will give is take it from the child themselves. You as a parent know more than anyone else what type of child that is. Is it a child that's going to thrive in a play environment? Is it a child that likes structure and likes to, changes something that's difficult for them? So knowing your child right from an early age, and then of course there's other factors, right? Like cost is one of them, location is another. There's so many things to take in case. You're lucky when I wanted to say you're right, and you're lucky, and I am too, that we have many good public options. Having said that, education changes all the time. Policies change, leadership changes, school culture changes. So I think more and more I'm being asked at an early age, like, how can I set my kid up for success? The hard part is there's probably for 100 people asking, there's 100 different answers.
Right.
And the reason for that is, like I said, you want to take the cues from your child. And believe it or not, that early stage is the hardest, because you just want them to grow. You want them to be happy. You want them to be safe, number one, right? And so a lot of parents were thinking, well, I want them to excel. I want them to get good grades. I usually say it's really early when you're just starting. And the key is to ensure that your son, your daughter, whoever it is that you're a guardian for, is in a place that they feel all of those things, that they feel seen, heard, respected, growth, independent, all of those things. And you need to visit. You need to visit schools. And this is the hardest time is, how do you make time? Because you can't just drop in. And, I'm sure parents would love if you just had cameras looking at different cameras. No, you do not want to do that, because it's like anything. There is over information. There's so many new exciting programming starting from an early age.
Right.
I like to say, if you can start them in even like summer camps or something, that exposes them, extracurricular, sports, dance, all of those different things, you start to see what are your child's preferences.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The majority of parents put their kids in public school. I do too.
Yeah.
And it is, because we hope it is the best. We hope that leadership there is doing the best. And I think for the most part, they are. I really, really
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
So look at your options. There are so many great options, publicly, privately. Um, get as much advice. Talk to other parents in your community. When you attend the park, and there's kids similar age, you might be part of moms groups, play groups. There's so many different things.
Yeah, yeah. And I have to say too, as a new parent, um, I was I didn't understand all of the different avenues that could provide resources, right? So here, locally in Ontario, we have I believe they're called Ontario. I forget what the program is called now. Now I'm of course now that I'm live, where it's kind of like if your child isn't in daycare, you can drop in, and they're drop-in programs that you can go and
Ontario early years
yes,
study.
early on, early on. Thank you so much. That's exactly what I was thinking of. There are early on services available, and they're typically attached to other daycares or other programs. So you kind of get a glimpse of what's going on the other side, maybe a little bit. You get familiar with the area, but they have resources for parents, and also your local libraries, your local pools, like your city pools will have lots of swimming programs. I will say this, the more remote that you live, where we used to live remotely, the availability would drop off. Wasn't as much, but now living somewhere like Kitchener, Kitchener, Ontario, they have so many pools, and I was just floored at how many options we had, and they're cost effective options, right? For 7-8 weeks of a program. And you're also kind of supporting the teenagers that now have jobs that are in high school, because they're often the lifeguards, the instructors. I used to do camps when I was in school. I was an instructor, so it's kind of like a full circle thing. And I find that with little kids, they love looking up to the older kids. It's like that cycle now. Like the older kids look up to adults or older kids, maybe university or even older, to see, hey, what does life look like in 5-10 years, kind of thing. So this is basically what our discussion can be focused around, because it is important to address it. And for us, for Helen and I, we have lots of opportunity to be flexible with our schedules because we picked entrepreneurship, but there's also certain things that you really don't have a choice on, and you have to kind of navigate around it. So I would love to hear kind of what your entrepreneurship journey, how that changed, how you can parent or how available you are. I'd love to hear it.
Definitely, you hit it on the nose when you said flexibility. So
Mm-hmm.
as an
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneur, the one thing, don't get me wrong, we're very busy, but the one
Yes.
thing is that you can schedule in everything that you said, community time, pools, all that. And there are, through most municipalities, there's excellent programming, like you said. And you're right, it's leadership development for the high school kids, for the university students. So through the public system, and if you're an entrepreneur, you always have your local school. As an entrepreneur, the one thing that and I wasn't always an entrepreneur, I have to emphasize that. So this is only within the recent years, and my kids are older, but I was fortunate that even as a salaried employee, that I was given some flexibility to explore different things as my kids grew older. Now, by explore things, it just meant getting more information. I can think back to when my kids were, let's go to grade 1, grade 2. And again, my theme is career exploration, career development.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me back at that time, it was important to expose my kids to as many options of careers as possible. So that it isn't just your standard that everyone knows, a firefighter, a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer, and so on. But it was, getting into an elevator and thinking, who do you think built this? Or going by in a bakery, there's everything from someone who's cooking it to someone who's selling it. And I think that was really young, that I know was important for me, that they just be aware that there are so many possibilities. That
Agreed.
because I think we think, oh, we have to have role models within our family. If we don't have an aunt or a neighbor who's a doctor, then they'll never be exposed to that. That's not at all. All of us in our everyday lives, we take our children to different things. And as an entrepreneur, you even have more opportunities because they
Yeah.
see you at home, they see you, how you're managing your time. But regardless of that, it's really to somehow build the importance of checking out resources. You said earlier on about you don't even realize how much there is out there. Going to your local community center or going to your local YMCA, there is incredibly affordable programming that we almost overlook because
Yes.
there is a tremendous amount of great private programming as well. So, of course, both are great. As an entrepreneur, I think the one thing that has certainly impacted me is my kids watch. Well, I think every kid watches everything their parent does, but I'm able to share with them some of the ups and downs as well, which go away to work during the day, they don't necessarily see or they don't even know sort of the interactions. But if you are, whether it be a small business, brick and mortar, or you're at home, your child is seeing the ups and downs. Things that
Yes.
are great, things that don't go, last minute decisions, last minute changes. And whether you realize it or not, that is creating for each child, for each young student, a formulation of what careers are.
Yeah.
And, I think, there's two sides of it that, oh, we shouldn't talk about careers. There's all different things. There's entrepreneurship. But I am a firm believer, my own philosophy is that it's intertwined in everything we do in our lives, in our life stages, whether we're living alone, whether we're with a partner, whether we're in a small town, metropolitan. I think all of those things, our kids watch and listen to everything.
Yeah, they do, and they're little sponges. I found that out pretty quickly when, um, I guess my son was telling his daycare teachers that, "Oh, mommy's working at home." Like, "What? Why are you talking about this?" Right? Or, "Mommy, I want a," which is this is hilarious. He can't say computer, so he said "paputer" for the longest time ever. "Mommy, I want a paputer," and I'm like, "Why? What are you saying? Like, why do you need this?" So one day I pulled out like a really old, Chromebook, and I just let him have like an empty doc, and I just wanted to see what, again, he's 4, he doesn't know how to type, he doesn't know how to do anything, but he is mimicking me to a T. I've never taught him this. He's just typing away and then playing with the mouse pad and typing away, then looking at me for a bit, and then, he just they learn so much from us without us even thinking about it or without us even having to actively be teaching them things. So it's such a good I think it's such a good exposure. I mean, I grew up with parents that had, very typical, I guess, service-based jobs. Like my dad's a plumber, like a commercial plumber, right? So he works on these big, big projects. So that kind of opened me up a little bit to the trades. I understood a little bit more about the trades. And then my mom was a tailor. And she still is, right? So has a very traditional job that you never see anywhere. And she's, traditionally trained, and she's got a vast amount of knowledge on this, but this is a dying profession here in Canada. So it was very interesting to see that. But she also had a part-time business with it. So then I got to kind of see a little bit of what that's like, or her managing clients. So I think I got a really good sense of it. My grandmother was a hairdresser. So I used to go hang out at her salon with all the other ladies. And again, just that exposure, you're right. It's not limited to just that, because they have friends, we have other family. One thing though, that was, um, sort of consistent for us in our family, was school. So you had to have an education, right? And I have my opinions about that too. Some people, not everybody is made for university or college. And I think that that's where this exposure comes in handy, so that you understand what you're good at and what you're not. But in my family, it was, my parents both went to post-secondary education in different, one was a trade school, one was university, and then trades. So there's a lot of structure within that. And for my grandparents and great grandparents that didn't get to have as much education because of the times, right? They also put an emphasis on, no, you should go, you should have the opportunity. So I think it's really important that you're right. You're not blocked in by what your family is experiencing. It's about exposure. It's about bringing new things in. And I say this a lot, as you can think of it like as a transferable skill, but I can usually tell if a person is open to other experiences. If you talk to them about, has your family ever exposed you to different kinds of foods? Because food is such a necessary part of life, and it happens so often that you form a habit of either you're really good at trying things, or you're not, right? Or you're kind of so on. So I can usually tell a lot about a person if they say, yeah, like, we tried all kinds of food, or when we travel, we do this and that, and my family always cooked, but borrowed recipes from all kinds of different cultures and whatnot. And I find that it helps me figure out how willing that person is to be exposed to different experiences, because it can be, with food especially, it could be amazing or it could be horrible, right? Depending on how, our taste buds, our willingness to try things. Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't just apply to food. I mean, everything from what we consume, music, culture, language, all those things. You're absolutely right. I mean, someone will say, well, I have a picky eater. Okay, that's fine. What else is happening in their world? And what I think, I mean, some of the questions I've been getting always over the years, my kids are much older. My daughter has completed university. She's actually working as a teacher, and my son is currently in post-secondary. But I'm always asked, like, how did you expose your kids to this and that, and to be open-minded? And I think my number one answer is to be open-minded myself. And I think, I've seen parents who, you touched earlier on the Chrome and them imitating you. When you see a child on, whether it's their phone, their computer, up until a certain age, and I would say the early teens, I would say, they are mimicking everything that you've done. Even though they may be consuming an incredible amount of technology, and that's a whole other sector.
Right.
Pros and cons to that. But it isn't until we, like you said, be open-minded, exposing them to foods, to music. So many times I'll hear a parent say, oh, my son and daughter, or daughter, my child, I should say, my child loves this type of music, just like me. And I'm like, of course they do. That's what you listen to. That's what's on streaming in your car, of course they are. And so even that, it's important to be curious, I think, as a parent. And if your kids see that you are curious and open, the majority of the times they will be too. Now, this is not everybody, of course, but especially when they're young and so impressionable. If they hear parents saying no, 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 no to everything new, to going somewhere new, to eating something new, they'll probably be saying no, no, no as well. And every child is different, 100%. But I think it's also like you said, you found out so much resources that you had no idea about. And it's because you were open-minded about it. And open-minded for education.
Yes, and I was also surrounded by other moms that were in the same, that's a community. It's a community that we slowly build as parents. And I feel this is true for dads too. I just don't think they talk about it as much as we do. I do have a friend who, he's a dad. He has two children. and he's on these like Facebook groups for dads, and what they do, it's hilarious to see the difference in interaction, right? Versus the mom groups, where a lot more open with sharing information than maybe the dads are, but the dads are the ones that are making trades for playgrounds and outdoor toys, and or hey, we can take the kids to do this fun activity. So it's very similar in how we build our communities when we're parents, and especially I love talking to other entrepreneurs that are parents, because I feel like there's that extra layer of understanding. I can't tell you how many meetings I've had, probably more than I would have wanted, but I don't feel guilty saying that. But I've had quite a few meetings where my son's either sick at home. You can hear the TV down the hall, or he just busts in here and starts saying hello to whoever client I'm talking to, and it's super embarrassing. But I have to say, because a lot of people I work with are entrepreneurs and they're also parents, they totally understand, and they're way more open to understanding this juggling act that we do as entrepreneurs, right? So we know that we can be flexible, but sometimes it's the same thing. It's what comes first. Family comes first. It should come first, right? So
I think COVID showed us that. I'll never forget. There was the very first video went viral at the beginning. It was even pre-COVID. Someone on video conferencing, and their child just sort of bolts in, and it went viral. It would not go viral anymore because it's normal now.
Yes.
It's completely normal. And, that, I think that is fantastic, because we are more than just what we do, more than just we work. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
We have families. Now, of course, you don't want your child sitting there or your cat on your shoulder kind of thing.
Sure.
That's walking in. But I think that we are all a little bit more just accepting of this happens. I know so many times, like it's happened to me. I'm talking to someone and someone walks by, and sometimes I don't even pay attention. And others, it's like, yeah, they're human. This is what's happening. We're not in closets hiding on microphones anymore.
No.
I'm not in my office today. I'm at home. Like that's the reality.
That's exactly it. We've made the decision to share a private part of our life, which is our home. And I know that a lot of people had home offices before this too, but it's different. We've opened this door. I have meetings with people across the world sometimes, right? So it's just different. We're living in this landscape of we're trying to juggle everything. We have gained some time by not being on the road all the time, being remote, but we've also added so much more to our plate. So for me, it's, I'll give you an example. Today is probably the best example. So it's Monday. Certain things, have to kind of fly right off the bat, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. And then first meeting, then second meeting, then radio show, then booking some things before I go. Then I have an appointment. Then I have to go grab my son from school, and then I have to take him to his classes, his extracurriculars. In the evening, in between there, I have to get dressed, pack a dinner, actually make it to my appointment. It's like out of this house, and then come back and go and put him right to bed, because it's going to be too late by the time we drive back. So yes, I love that I am able to pack all of this into my own schedule, but I have to think of, okay, when do we get downtime this week then? Or when, I have to meet his needs, I have to meet my needs, I have to meet my clients' needs. It's always a juggling act. And that means that I am on my phone a lot, right? It means that I'm either taking calls or I'm answering messages or emails. And that's okay if that gives me the flexibility to do what I want to do, or to be able to take time off. We took some time off this summer, right, to travel. That was great. That was amazing. And I don't think you could replace that. But it does make me think, my next question, I guess, kind of rolls into, this next topic. But before I do that, I should probably do a halfway intro here. So for those of you who are just tuning in, this is Negotiating Happiness. I'm your host, Adriana, and we are live on the United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 105.3 and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. And I am here with Helen from Azul Education Services, and we are talking all about entrepreneurship, parenting teenagers, how to best support them, and how to put education at the at the top to see how we can basically support our kids and also make it out alive out of this whole journey. So I was just going to move on to my question of, you always have to do business planning. You always have to do family planning. Where does education come into this? What are some of the things that we can do to help ourselves? And I will tell you right now, I'm guilty of this. I need to open an RESP, an education savings for my child, so that he has some options down the road. But what can you do to plan for this as an entrepreneur? Like, what, in your opinion, what can we do?
There's so much. Just
I know.
Okay, but let me start with something that you just touched on, RESPs. Yeah. Those are something that as an entrepreneur, that there's going to be fluxes. There's going to be ups and downs. And I think the key there that you said is you put it at the top, you put it at priority, and you know that you want to put aside funds consistently for your child to access later on for whatever they choose. Yeah. And someone will say, oh, is it too early? They're just starting grade 1. You can start as early as you can. And these things are about habits, right? Because once you start it, then it just continues and you don't think about it. I think it's much harder when your kid is older and you go, I wish I had done that. So having the foresight to think, okay, what's my life going to look like? And this is something you can do on your own, obviously not involving your kid, but just think, fast forward, your child's going to be 16. What's going to happen then? They will be in high school. They will start to have to think about what's next for them and how will you be prepared emotionally, financially, so many different things. And the finance part is, it should be on everyone's mind. Education, we're lucky in Canada that it's not completely prohibited. Prohibitive finance, but it's still a lot of money. Residence is a lot of money. Trades, I think people go into it thinking it's not a lot of money. No, they have to buy their tools to go do their apprenticeship, to do their education. So I think the moment that you have a child and you want them to have options, it is ideal if you can put something aside. Now, I'm not a financial advisor, but I know someone who is. And the key there is that you speak with someone that you trust and look at what is it that's doable right now? What is it that you would like to be at? And where can you start making that plan? It's more than financial, though. So that was one piece. The other place is even where you live. So you talked much earlier about rural or metropolitan. All those things are important. Like if you are in a smaller community, you're right, their options are less. But if you're wanting to give them options, it is to talk about, hey, do you think later on you'll want to, fast forward to that 16-year-old? Is it something they want to go to school close to home? Is it that they want to study abroad or study in another province, which is, very expensive as well. So finance is definitely number one there. Second about is just planning to give them options. The best thing you can do is to find out, to help them along the way, expose them to different options, stay open-minded, so that they're not just on one track. And if they are on one track, that's fantastic. But still, I'm big on having plan Bs and Cs and even Ds for some families. But it's so that things have shifted. that it isn't just about you anymore. You do have a child. You are taking care of someone, and you want to give them the best opportunity you can.
That's
And
right.
that's ultimately inserting them in your plans, looking at 1 year, 5 year, 10 year. Now, nothing says that you know what's going to happen, but everything can change. But
Mm-hmm.
if you equip yourself with best case scenario, worst case scenario, and then most likely the reality in between, then you are preparing yourself as a parent, you're preparing your child to help them make decisions as well. So often what I hear the most is my 16-year-old doesn't know what to do. That's completely normal. I think it's almost 70% don't know yet in grade 11.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's fine because, it's overwhelming. It really,
Yeah.
really is. But to support them, again, building up to that stage and during that stage is, again, having conversations, candid conversations. Some kids are sharers and love to talk, and others aren't. And so you have to find what is that avenue that you're going to find out what they like, what's important to them. I'm almost, I use this term quite a bit, but it's much more than just career planning. It's lifestyle planning. It's
Mm-hmm.
everything. It's
Mm-hmm.
really thinking about how you will be available or not available, what to do. And so for me, it's sitting down yourself, having plans, and then as they age, include them a little bit more. You're not going to include your 7-year-old in their plans for the next
Right.
10 years, but your 17-year-old, you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your 20-year-old, hopefully you're still having those conversations, whether they live
Yeah.
with you or not, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Communication is at the top of any of this.
Yeah.
And I think, the questions last year, one of the most frequent questions I got from parents were, how do I know if my child is making the right decision? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you
You
never,
don't. You
there's
don't.
no guarantee in anything.
No.
Anyone who's looking for, what is the job, what is the career that they're always going to have employment, or what is it they'll make the most money, or what is it they'll be happiest in? There is a giant, giant wheel out there of all those things.
Yeah.
Having that conversation, good. That's a great place to start. But there are no definite answers.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that because it kind of gives me an insight in what other parents are thinking about, which is super helpful. Just to know you're not alone out there. But just having this conversation will bring out information that you would be surprised. We tend to think that we kind of know what the answers are, but then you'd be surprised at certain things. So here's a scenario. I'm separated, so we had to have this conversation very early on. I mean, Zach was only 3, so we had this conversation of whose responsibility is it, and how are we splitting this responsibility, and how do we best support our child even separately? So, you will be surprised by some of the answers that some people have, their views on education or views on how to fund education. And it's important to have them to begin with. And then you're right, once Zach gets older, it would be easier to say, listen, as your parents, we've had these conversations and you need to learn some responsibility as well. Maybe you're also involved in funding part of your education because it's a realistic thing to do, right? And everybody can help as much as they want or can. I'm a big believer of, I have to be there to support my child because I was supported as well and to make things a little bit easier. You want to avoid debt and all that, but sometimes it's unavoidable. It was unavoidable for me and I made it out. And, it's just another example of you figure it out. You have plan Bs and Cs and Ds. And this kind of takes you into, now that you're old enough to have a job, first of all, how do I teach you to prioritize things? Um, I was very impulsive with money And it took me a really long time to even learn control over that. And I don't want to put my son into that position. So now I'm sitting here wondering, how can I, normalize this? Let's talk about money. Let's not make it taboo. Let's talk about, how are you going to spend it? What percentage are you investing back in yourself? And I really, really want to teach him this really early on, that it's not just about instant gratification, because that's what my impulses were about. It's like, how do you navigate that? So how do you teach your teenager to say, how are you investing back in yourself? Because they're going to be very confused when you say words like that, right? But it's about development. It's about, what else can you achieve with this money, or how can you, and never mind investing. Like, this was not a thing when I was growing up. And I wish it was. I wish I knew more about that, right? So how do we prepare them once they're old enough to have a job to look forward to their careers? Because you're right, it might be very hard for them to be focused on their future when they don't even know what they want to do yet.
Yeah. All of the things you mentioned are questions that hopefully every adult is having, every parent is having.
Yeah.
Even like helping out a niece, a nephew, whatever it may be. One of the things that I recommend that you start with is, and you mentioned your personal example as someone who's separated, is that you're having this decision early on that it's important to you. What are you going to do? How are you both going to show up for your son in this case? And then it is, as they get older, of even simple things like saying, when you grow up, we're going to help you with finding out what you want to do. This is important. And telling stories along the way. And it never stops. When they're teenagers, it feels like the biggest decision they're going to make, especially as teenagers, where everything is monumental. You fall in love, you get heartbreak, everything is do or die. And the same thing happens with some students about post-secondary. They are so terrified because what if they make the wrong decision?
Right.
If you have gone along the way, and for me, this was a huge part, is we're going to make mistakes. And hopefully what your kids see as you start to talk more about it is that they see the reality that instead of being fearful of it, of explore different things. One of the reasons my business started is I was having these conversations with so many parents of kids I know. And I had worked in post-secondary for many, many years, doing admissions, doing recruiting, doing all different student services, that I always thought, this is too late. They're already in post-secondary. I think where I can make a much bigger difference helping students and helping parents is at a younger age. So with high school students. And what I've seen is, and I saw myself as a parent too, you don't want to rupture that parent-child relationship. If they start to see you as, well, mom says I can only do this, or dad says I can only do this. These are, two, or there's a mentality of scarcity, which means like, we'll never have enough. Oh my goodness, we'll never have enough to send you to university. The conversations, if they're driven by you want to support them, and that, again, there's always someone to talk to. Right now, many of my colleagues are guidance counselors. They're overwhelmed. First, when they start off, it's, adding and dropping courses for high school students, particularly for grad students who realize, oh no, I need calculus, or I can drop calculus, hooray. I got someone else to talk to my kids. Right. And told them, like, I'm going to be your mom and I have all this information. But one of the things that I wish I had done more of is gotten sort of a career counselor for my own kids other than my own opinion. Right. In my private practice, working with high school students, oh my goodness, they tell me everything. And that's part of the relationship building I do as well, is that these are going to be, I am working for you, for the student. And I'm essentially telling the parent, okay, take some stress off, because when you're asking your kid, well, have you sent this application? All they're hearing is, nah, 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 my mom, dad are nagging me. So find out, who can support them, who can assist them. And sometimes I do say, have someone other than a parent also that
Yeah.
the child can speak to, trust, because those candid conversations, they freeze up in those teenage years with parents.
Yeah.
And
Dynamics, right? Dynamics change.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And so I love talking to high school students, especially if they're not sure, or those ones who really want to get into competitive programs. How do they get an edge? What can they do to stand out? And with me, of course, I've got lots of experience in my professional education that I can help them navigate that landscape.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is we can't be everything. Like you talked about your busy schedule. You're an entrepreneur. You're a mom. You're trying to involve your kids in different extracurriculars.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest lesson I've learned along the way, as my kids have aged, as I have aged, as I have learned, is to not feel like we have to do it all on our own. To feel that, you said you have a community of other parents that you talk to. There are services. I offered them. Lots of people offer different things. And even something as simple as, not simple, but talking to your family doctor about your child. I mean, I don't think we do that. I think our healthcare system is very much about symptoms and diagnosis. It isn't about, and I remember I've had a fantastic family doctor all along who always asked, how's your son? How's your daughter? What are they thinking about? Find someone who's going to do that. And say that I would sit with my family doctor and talk about university plans. That never was the case. But it was the case as my kids became 18. My family doctor knew my priorities as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For my child. And seldom does that even come up as an education plan or thing. And yet to me, it's actually influenced. The other thing that when kids get to that age is there's so much negativity right now. There is, the job market, or, technology is going to take over our jobs, or just what's happening in the world is scary sometimes. It is so important that there, I on social media, I was hopeful Helen for a long time for many people, and I hope I still am. And it is about exposing them to someone who, aside from being their parent, their guardian, is just going to talk to that kid and pull out, because that's sometimes what it is encouraging them to share.
Open
and
up,
exercises I do that with. There's all sorts of tests and exercise that someone who's professional is trained to do. And so to parents is try not to put all that pressure that it's only you. Kids, it is a village. And we need to tap into that. We need to be open to that. And as we're open to that, our kids will also trust other in that network that you've built to talk to. Or, and I love that I had nieces and friends of, children of friends who just said, can you talk to my kid? And yes. And then, depending on what they need, support them. But career navigating with a teenager is complex.
Yes.
Don't have all the answers.
Right.
But we should have a lot of questions.
Right.
Have a lot of dialogue and exploration and unlimited exposure to what are options. And I'm guilty of this myself, although my parents didn't have post-secondary, and my grandparents, we come from a small town, agricultural laborers. But I know that it was really important to them that I have an education. Mm-hmm. What I did with the words, they had no idea. It was kind of like, you figure it out. Well, but I do think that we have so many resources out there. I tapped into so many different things along the way. And kids and parents don't realize that there are literally hundreds and thousands of people that can support your child along the way.
Yeah.
And that you don't have to have all the answers, and that you're going to make some mistakes, and then you learn to pivot. You learn to, oh, okay. I've seen parents who put children in one system and then take them to the other system. Again, that happens. And as long as that transition is being monitored and that you're aware and being there. I mean, as an entrepreneur, you highlighted earlier, some of the benefits is we get to just spend time with our kids.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's, no matter how much you're juggling, in there you had pockets where if you're picking up your child's conversations in the car, if you're dropping off your child afterwards, how was it? Obviously I don't do this anymore with my kids because they're both adults, but at young ages, for me, it was roses and thorns. Some people call it, all sorts of things, but at the end of the day, it was so important for me, the roses is what went well, and thorns was what didn't go so well. And some days they were big lists, and someday it was like, I can't think of anything. But it was consistent for bedtime to find out what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And know that I'll never know everything. And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's, I think, entrepreneurship, to me, makes it that on top of your busy schedule, your clients, your parents, it's something that you have a benefit of also showing them, what you do. I mean, that's why they started to take kids to take your daughter to school, take your son to school, take your children to work.
Work day. Yeah.
Your children to work, to expose them. And those are excellent things. And if you as a parent don't have them, send it to your neighbors. Send it to, I've taken other kids to where I worked before. Yeah. And I still think that those are things that it shouldn't be only in grade 9. It should be even earlier. And it's to nurture that curiosity at an early stage that will maintain, that will stay as a teenager, and will stay as an adult as well.
Can I say that too? I agree with what you're saying. I was still in high school. This was a long time ago, where they were allowing you to do your volunteer hours. So for anybody that doesn't know, and in order to get your high school diploma, there is a requirement also not only to have all the credits, or at least a minimum amount of credits. You also have to have what used to be 40 hours of volunteer service. I don't know if it's still the same. Sometimes people had hundreds and hundreds of hours. They would receive recognition for that. Very much encouraged. It used to be that you could go and volunteer at your parents' place of work, and you used to get hours for it. Then they changed it as I was handing in my hours, that it had to be either a nonprofit or a charity or something that isn't directly a business in the traditional sense. And I think that was such a big mistake for my view as a student, because I got to see what my mom did at her work, and I got to talk to, I learned how to speak to the general public. I handled some of the orders. I understood about, prioritizing, scheduling, time blocking at a very young age, not in those terms. I didn't know at the time that that's what they were, but it exposed me to what a real life day-to-day, interaction in a workplace. And I think that, maybe I say it's a mistake, but I do know that they've improved in the types of co-op programs that you can do where you can get that sort of exposure. So I don't mean to say it that way, but in my case, because it was a requirement and I didn't have the opportunity to do co-op, it was such a good gateway into that world for me to see, oh, this is really cool. That's actually how I got my first job, is I met somebody while I was volunteering that said, oh, other languages, what else can you speak? And that's where we formed a relationship that way. So I will always view it as, an opportunity. Take the opportunity to do something that you're interested in, to actually see if you want to be in there. We're almost out of time here because we're having such a great discussion, but I just wanted to kind of tell people a little bit about, the sort of support that you give students. I love that you touched on, you are that other person that is not their parent, but is a professional, has experience in, career development and how to apply for the right schools for you or for the right programs, and how to plan for the eventualities where your situation changes. Not only, not just if you don't get in, but what if your situation changes and you have to think about where you're living, where you're going to school, how you're funding it, what does your application say about you, and what, and Helen offers insight into these schools as well. So in Ontario, we have, different universities and colleges, and there are not as many as people might think, actually. If you sit down and look at the list, not as many as people might think. So Helen has insight that most of us will not, unless we've attended or have been part of administration there, right?
Mhm.
So not only do you, help people get in and be successful, you also deal with scholarships and grants, and you teach people how to apply for those or how to even find them, and also career development. So it goes beyond post-secondary school or being in there and just being successful. So, Helen is a wealth of resources when it comes to this really important stage in a young person's life. So I just wanted people to go ahead and go to her website at azuleducationservices.com. And also you can find Helen on Instagram. And as you can see, just as she is pleasant here, she's also pleasant in her DMs. So please feel free to send her a message if you have questions. She's got loads and loads of information. And we're just seeing Christine Hall here. Hello, Christine. Thank you for saying hi. I love it when
Thanks,
when people go in. Oh, look, Helen's workshops and consultations are so helpful. They definitely are. I've worked with Helen one-on-one, so I can attest to this as well. You're having a workshop come up, we'd love it if you want to come back and talk to us about it, or even in the new year. There's just so much more that we could talk about, right?
There is so much more, and you're right.
Yeah.
Thank you for just pointing out, and thanks, Christine. I do parenting workshops. They're free. I'll be probably having one coming up in October, because there's so many questions, many questions, so many options. I think it's overwhelming for kids. It's overwhelming for parents. Post-secondary just means after high school. It does not necessarily mean just university or college. There's trades. There's work. There's students who co-ops are excellent. I'm so happy that high school programming involves co-ops now for many, many students. And I just lastly touch on that volunteer. So it is still 40 hours requirement. You're absolutely right. Some students have more and more of them. The reason they changed it to not necessarily being with a parent is that whole understanding of volunteering, of service, of working for someone. Because what you emphasize is you got so many life skills. You got like employment opportunities even from it. Volunteering, that 40 hours is in the requirements for Ontario high school students. And it is for them to have a better understanding of that it isn't just paid employment.
Yes.
And for some, the biggest thing I hear is, I don't know where my kid can volunteer. Oh my goodness, there's so many organizations that would love a student, even for just 3 hours, helping them out with everything from mailing to fundraising to stocking shelves at a food bank.
Events, lots of events typically rely on volunteers as well. Yeah, no, for sure.
I've played with the whole idea of just creating a list of all of that. So thanks so much for emphasizing those things.
No, thank you so much. And, head on over to Helen's website. She has so much more information on there as well. And if you can't get to Helen, get to me first. I will pass on the contact. Thank you so much for coming on. We are at the mark here, and I would love to see you again. And thank you for everybody that tuned in into the platform. Thank you for allowing us to have this space to kind of spread our messages of, what entrepreneurship is like and how everybody deals with it. and I love bringing on people that love to spread, information that's super helpful and very much necessary. So thank you to the United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network and everybody that tuned in. We will see you next week at the same time. And thank you. Have a great rest of your week, everybody.
Bye-bye.